I think we better start because we were a bit late in the schedule, and then it's a fixed time for dinner. So let's immediately start with our distinguished guest, Seyed Vahid Karimi, who is, as probably you all know, who is the director of the Directorate for European Affairs at the Institute for Political International Studies in Tehran. And I think when this forum was organized, the organizers were thinking of somebody coming from Iran because there are a lot of things which are more or less belonging to the part of the mysterious policy of Iran, which we know mostly about some issues which are concerning only the nuclear program. And all of a sudden, it's a perfect timing right now. The events in no more than last week are becoming the top issue of international politics, starting with sayings of President Rouhani that he's ready to solve and to speed up the negotiated settlement about the nuclear issue. Of course, it's always said on an equal basis and accepting the talks. Then we learned that Presidents Obama and Rouhani were exchanging the letters. Then finally, we got the support of the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, to the President Rouhani, which was also something rather new, because we were thinking only in terms of the previous stance of the Supreme Leader. And finally, we got the interview of President Rouhani with the NBC television, where he just said very clearly that Iran doesn't have any intentions of producing the nuclear weapons. In fact, what attracted international attention, those words by President Rouhani, in fact, they are nothing new. Because, and if we go back, and Supreme Leader a couple of years ago gave his religious opinion, fatwa, saying that nuclear producing and using nuclear weapons is forbidden. After that, he precised more and said it's a sin. The same argument was always used by all Iranian presidents, including and belonging to the, I must say, rather confrontational rhetorics of the previous President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. But so it's a constant position of official Tehran to say to defend the right for useful piece of the nuclear energy, and denying all the accusations that it is in military purposes. So if we analyze now and we ask ourselves, and I will ask as a very first question to our guest, did the West change its position all of a sudden, accepting President Rouhani as one new chance to solve one of the most complicated political issues on the world arena? And how much we are talking in realistic terms nowadays, when there is even it's mentioned that President Obama and President Rouhani can meet directly. That would be history. And how close we are to that history, and how seriously the things which we are witnessing nowadays are changing the overall atmosphere in the relations between the big Sultan and the world enemy number one.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God. First of all, let me express my gratitude to the organizer that provided me such opportunity. Yes, you are right. Your introduction was very comprehensive. Let us finger cross, because the beauty of democracy is when you have new faces, new government, it means new opportunities. Next week, General Assembly in New York, we have to watch it and see if history is going to happen. In 2 days conferences over here, which discussion were very rich, I enjoyed in fact. I heard lots about reconciliation or detente. Yes, we could make history. We never opted for nuclear weapons because we do not believe on that. Not because of US request not to produce it, because our belief doesn't allow us. That's against humanity. I can give you an example that the countries who have the nuclear weapons, it didn't save Soviet from the collapse. Even it didn't save New York from the attack. Even the countries, those who have it, they do not feel security. They are not certain that it gives ultimate security. Our power comes from the support of the people, dignity, history, Persian civilizations, knowledge, the logic behind our policies, arts, movies, philosophy. As you know, in recent election, more than 70% of the Iranians participated in the election. It's very high. That's the power of Iran. We don't need nuclear weapons. Our slogan is that nuclear energy for all and nuclear weapons for none. In fact, it was Iran proposed that Middle East to be free of all kinds of weapons of mass destruction.
If I can so the question is, and many people are asking themselves, why with all those arguments, why Iran is not accepting the international control of nuclear technology? So, and then by such a control, like we have more or less similar situation with Syria and with chemical weapons, once for all say, well, with the attest of the international community, yes, there is no, Iran is not intending to produce nuclear weapons, and that's it. Why it doesn't come? Why and the negotiations are going that slowly? So the last round, which happened in April this year, with the so-called 5+1 group, also failed. So do you expect that with the new government in Iran and those things can happen?
You will excuse me that the word control is not right, because you know Iran is a member of NPT. According to that treaty, Iran has the right for peaceful enrichment of uranium. We are in total cooperation with IAEA. There is no report of non-compliance from Iran. These are the facts. So we are in very cooperative mood with the agencies of international organizations. According to the NPT, the countries who have it, they are obliged to provide the facilities for the Iran. You see, there are few countries that are trying to prevent Iran from joint venture with other countries to have it. They are not allowing other countries to join in. They are not providing this energy to Iran, and they are trying to prevent Iran producing itself. That's wrong. So we are on a mood for win-win solution of this phenomena. I think time has come for reconciliation about not only nuclear issue, but other issue in the region. Afghanistan, Iraq, you know, if you go around the countries in Iran, we have 15 neighbors. All of them has problem. Iran is only a stable country in the region, and we have proved to be cooperative. We have shown in Afghanistan before. In fact, in Iraq, it was Iran has facilitated the US withdrawal from Iraq and provided a kind of re-election for President Obama, which he could make the commitments he wanted to the people of the United States.
So, because you're a diplomat and I'm a journalist,
Please.
then I have to be more direct. Going back to the unanswered part of the first question, do you share the optimism which all of a sudden we are talking about, that the progress can be done in terms of Iran, West, and especially United States relations?
Absolutely, yes. Why not? We need it. Enough is enough. We have new government, new opportunities, therefore moderation. Yes, why not? It is possible, but it needs that two sides to look at for win-win solution. That is our approach. We have looked always for that because, you know, you can't, you know, borrow a country from advanced technology. We need that for medicine, for agriculture.
And is such a policy going to have the strong support inside Iran?
Yes. You see, when 74% of the Iranians participate in the election, it means they are happy with the process.
74% can be read and on the other way, that 74% of those who voted unexpectedly for President Rouhani were not satisfied with the policy of the previous government. In domestic terms, in terms of economical things which are happening, inflation, unemployment, and everything else, plus the isolation that a lot of young people, and Iran is a very young nation, is thinking and wishing that Iran get out of international isolation. So those 74% we can read on different ways. But so you do agree that beside the support of the Supreme Leader, President Rouhani, with his definitely new approaches, at least in the style and the form of the foreign policy, will get the support overwhelmingly inside the political circles in Iran?
Of course, you see, you may be right. I do not dispute that argument. But, you know, Iranian people are very intelligent. They know how they approach the way. They know that the sanctions imposed upon Iran is the most inhuman and illegal action unilaterally taken by some countries. So to change the course, down with the government, we do have the problems. There is no doubt about it. But they know that the sanction is imposed upon the people of Iran. So people are coming to the support of the government for new courses to show that they are standing with the government. If it is for nuclear energy, they are standing behind the government. If it is for the new courses, they are again standing. Let me give you one example. There is a school of thought in Iran. They say that these sanctions of Iran are interrelated to the euro crisis in Europe, because Iran is a rich country. Iran is a highway to a bigger market in Central Asia. Who is the loser? This is Europe. Both started at the same time. When the West or the Europeans started sanctions upon Iran, the euro crisis started over here in your continent. So now we see the sign of removing some banks in Iran from the sanction list. Ship line in Iran is over. Every day we have the removal of sanction in one part or the other section of the industry in Iran. So we hope by new government, new opportunities, the euro crisis also in Europe will be over.
There is also a school of thinking that sanctions are counterproductive for the reformist processes in Iran. That what started in 2009 stopped, or at least it's not flourishing in a way, and the sanctions helped it. And beside that, I would just ask you the question. I have the impression that, so I privatize a bit this forum. I've been many times in Iran, and I think there is a kind of a misconception or misunderstanding of Iran in terms of West, that supporting so-called reformist movement is a support for regime change in Iran. My question would be, those who are asking for political, social, economical reforms in Iran, including the leaders of so-called Green Revolution of 2009, were never thinking of changing the system of Islamic Republic. And this is something what sometimes is a kind of misconception in understanding and approaches of the West. No, there are no forces who are against the basic principles of which were laid down at the time of Ayatollah Khomeini in '79. So there can be some changes, and now we are expecting those changes. And perhaps, do you think that the West can repeat the mistake of the so-called revolution of rising expectations in terms of President Rouhani?
You see, as you mentioned, that there is some misperception in the West about Iran, how the process goes, how the structure of the power structure of Iran is. We need more interaction. But the point is that this misperception has led Europe to the misjudgment. How to overcome it? Yes, we need dialogue. That is why the new government says that the policy is that we need more dialogue to overcome the differences. We had a good cooperation in Iraq, Afghanistan, in the region. We could extend it to other areas. In fact, I wanted to give a paper to this esteemed conference forum about the South European, problems from an Iranian point of view, because I see lots of similarities between these two regions. You have still some uncertainties in the region, and we do have problems in the Middle East, everybody knows it. But there is a big difference. You have the goodwill of the transatlantic cooperation to overcome these problems, whereas we do not have it in the Middle East. You had the German reunification. That experience could help us. You had the extension of the European Union to the Central and Eastern Europe. It could be extended to the Middle East, North Africa, but by a goodwill. That's a possibility we are looking for, but the problem is that some specific countries are preventing other, members of the European Union even to extend its relation with Iran, with the region as a whole. So the question of internal matters of Iran belongs to the Iranian people, which the constitution of Iran allows for the change. In fact, everybody is in favor of the reform and change, because change is the nature of the mother nature. You have change of the seasons, spring, summer, winter. So we need change in our life, even in the political system. That is why we have new governments. And let me emphasize in this point, sometimes you need to be tough when they are going to ignore your rights of producing nuclear energy. We need, for example, I give you an example, you just answer me. We need 20% enrichment isotopes for the hospitals. under the sanctions, no country is going to provide this to us. What to do? Millions of people are waiting in the hospitals for the x-rays and all that. Neither selling it to us, neither allowing to produce it, neither participating in joint venture. Now we need more, 20 sites of nuclear energy for the production of the electricity. At present, we are supplying electricity to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to Armenia. Send your engineer to come in Iran, create jobs over here, and you will be present over there, that it won't be misused. So these are the good opportunities for the West, particularly the European countries and European Union, to come in Iran. Let us forget about the past. My approach is positive approach. I'm looking always to the future. History is good, but we shouldn't stuck into history. We have to learn from the history and look forward to the future.
I will, before I ask you to raise some questions if there are, I would just, because we can't mention the dilemma which is existing nowadays. As President Rouhani is trying to convince American administration and the Western countries that he is sincere in his attempts to negotiate, and that it's going to be the real dialogue about the real questions. At the same time, fighting for the influence in the White House and American administration is Israel. Arch enemy, even it's a paradox, I don't know, who knows that those two countries were very, very close allies at the time of Shah, and were even producing the missiles together. Now their own missiles are against each other. So, and Israel is trying to convince White House that it's not worth talking with Iran, that even today we heard from one Israeli minister that it's useless, that Iran is only 6 months far from its nuclear bomb. And how would you describe this race for the influence to convince the Americans to talk or not to talk?
Thank you, Boško. You raise a very important point, that the question is that if there is a goodwill on Iranian side from President Rouhani, which he already said in public that he has the authority to overcome the nuclear issue, because from our point of view, it is a technical problem. But they are putting it in a political context. But let me tell you my analysis about the skepticism about this process. To be frank with you, because here there are eminent scholars, President Obama is weak. There is a saying among the Americans. They say that only Nixon could go to China. Iran is a big issue. There is no consensus within the United States, and that worries me, because Congress is totally against President Obama. They are waiting to kick him out of the White House. Even in internal issues, they are not cooperating with President Obama. I'm worried and I'm concerned that opposite to President Rouhani, which has the support of the Iranian people and the leadership, is not the same the case with President Obama.
So you doubt that President Obama can get that overall support for starting negotiations and even going in a direct talks at this moment?
Yes, if you look at the system which different countries they do have, the check and balance sometimes, if they are not cooperating with each other, they can prevent You know, even in internal matters, as I mentioned, because it was just 6 months ago I returned from my post in United Nations. I have been through the US election. That is not a perfect, you know, system of government. We have the French type, we have the Italian type, we have the British type, and we have the Iranian type. It is a kind of, you know, research that we look which government, system of government could be productive. I don't see that in United States. As I said, that I think that Iran could work much better with the Republicans rather than Democrats. But we have to see if might be happens, you know, in next week. We have to see the process. But it's good to mention it that the scholars who will follow Iran-US relation to see which side has the deficit of the will to go ahead. We don't see it in Iran because the mood is there. We have been also incorporative. As I said that in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in the Persian Gulf, we are cooperating, we are coordinating because we are looking for peace and stability in the region. But it's not coming from the United States. For the last 34 years, we have been under sanction, right from the beginning of the revolution. It's nothing new. That's why you see the support of the people of Iran behind the government. Sanctions are not new.
So you sound as a cautious pessimist, and you already, before even talks started, you blamed United States or restrictions which President Obama is facing if it doesn't go through.
Yes, because naturally Congress can obstacle. As there are some news in the paper, for the rest of his tenure, he's going to be a lame dog president. And it happened before in the United States. That concerns me, but we have to see, because in the second term, usually the presence of the United States try to be more advantageous. President Reagan has the Iran gate, Clinton has that other cases, and George Bush has the Iraq, you know, with flood and false information, intelligence gathering in Iraq and all that. But I think Obama is trying to leave behind a very positive legacy, but he needs the Congress, you know. And the Congress, as you mentioned, because it's not worth of mentioning the different lobbies in the United States, but Congress is not cooperative. Even within the U.S. budget for the payments of the workers, the salaries of the workers in the they keep Obama to the end of the last minute, and he has problem. I'm a little bit skeptical.
So you managed to miss mentioning Israel and the influence for the Congress or the president himself.
You see, that is obvious. We can give you the example the other way, that we feel that the Islamic awakening, which has come to the North Africa, is rooted in the Islamic Revolution of Iran in 1979. And in my opinion, it has reached to Europe and United States. How? You see, Cameron and Obama, they were going to repeat the same Tony Blair and George Bush invasion of Iraq. That was 2003. Syria escaped that invasion because of the people of Britain, because of people of the United States. And that is, I call it conscious awakening in the West. And we have to praise the British people. They have stopped the war. Otherwise, it was going to be repeated as they did in the Iraq case. So I think we are witnessing a new emergence of the public opinion, public diplomacy, people awareness. They are not trusting their, politicians, officials. The corruption in Europe, in the West, is as equal as terrorism. So dangerous.
So what more or less is the corrective force it's public opinion in the West. In the Iranian political system, it's more or less the supreme leader. What he say, we all know that his word is final. Traditionally, he supports the new president for maximum 2 years, even when he doesn't agree with the new president. So, and President Rouhani doesn't have too much time to use to deliver what he is talking nowadays.
That's a prediction. That's about future. I have provided the power structure of Iran if they could show kindly on the screen, because it is worth of just going to the Iranian power structure. Is it possible to show it in the screen? So easy, because you know, Supreme Leader calls himself as a servant of the people. The people of Iran, huh?
As all leaders do.
Yes, but he's exercising that. You see, people of Iran, they elect all the officials, even the supreme leader. But the supreme leader is elected indirectly. The president is, and members of parliament are elected directly. He gives his view. For example, on nuclear issue, he had the same view all the times for all the governments of President Khatami, President Ahmadinejad, and the same President Rouhani. He advises the president to preserve the rights of the people. There's nothing wrong with it. This is the executive power to use different tactics. Some of them has to be tough because the other side is tough. Some of them has to be reconciliatory because the other side has the goodwill. So we have to look. As I said that, I hope it goes smoothly in a very good way, because President Rouhani is flying to New York. I think there's possibility of meeting both sides. But we do have the experience of the US foreign policy for last, 60, 70 years. Right after the Second World War, the Middle East was engaged in all problems. Each and every president of the United States, when he comes to the White House, he invites both Palestinian and the other occupied regime leaders and all that for photo opportunity. But nothing proceeds in a positive way to preserve the rights of the people over there. We know it. Then how we should be expecting overnight we go across all the problems? The problem this time rests with the United States of America, and we have to see, I think, from different angles, different perspectives from the other side. You are more or less emphasizing on Iran. Iran is as it is. It has been for the last 30 years. I think the West has to correct its attitude towards Iran. We are not opting for nuclear weapons because that's against our belief and religion. We are opting for the cooperation. I gave example of yesterday. There were lots of data that Iran poses a threat. But I said that where did you brought these data? If you Google on internet, for last 100 years and even 200 years, Iran never attacked any country. That's what the history of Iran says. That's in practical terms we are doing.
I'm afraid we don't have that much time, going back to the time of Mossadegh coup and explaining in details the very complicated structure of that unique political system of Iran, which is combining theocracy and republics. Let me ask if there are some questions for you.
Hakan Altanay, I'm moved by your concern about the Euro crisis and the political mandate of Obama, but my questions are not about that. I have two questions. we learned that the supreme leader considers production and possession of weapons of mass destruction as un-Islamic. Does that mean that we can hear from him or any other Iranian leader condemnation of Syrian chemical weapons as they are weapons of mass destruction? And the second question is, the Iranian missiles themselves. You have long-range missiles, so assuming that you're not planning to send flowers in them, what good are they for?
Shall I?
Yes, please.
Yes, so easy. Yes, chemical weapons are inhuman. Iran was the first to ask for the Middle East as a free zone of all kind of ABC, atomic, biological, and chemical weapons. And we are forging for that. We are proposing that again. And Egypt also is cooperating with us because they are also a member of that initiatives. And let me tell you one example. These chemical weapons used in Syria is not the first time. In fact, Iran was the victim of the chemical weapons. The Iraqi people were the victims of the chemical weapons. It was the double standards of the West, particularly the Western European countries and the United States. If they used to be tough that time, we never witnessed this time. You have to remind the history what they have done. When they use double standard, then it will be repeated again. Yes, that is condemned, that is inhuman. And the second question about the missiles, we would like to be active in a space, what to do, how we can go. Why you see the missiles in a wrong way? Missiles is for satellites. We would like also to have GPS on our cars in Tehran moving to know the traffics and all that. Each and every technology, phenomena, has a positive dimension and negative dimension. When it comes on Iran, it is the negative one. When the West are supplying, armament to the rebels, supplying terrorism to the Syria, even supplying or pushing their extremist nationalists to Syria to get them killed, nobody bothers about it. I think a scholar has to be balanced.
Thank you very much for excellent way of presentation of the issue, but I have a number of observations actually before the floor will be more active in Q's and A's as an Iranian. I think there are a number of issues that we have to take into consideration in understanding about the Iranian model of governance. Basically, in the West, the view is that supreme leader has the last word on everything, and he's an unelected, persons, things like that. But we have to take into account that Iranians are big geopolitical player. So by long history and long civilization and culture, they understood over time how to define something, how to design something in such a way that they can stand against the uncertainties which come from outside. So by that, I mean that the structure of power in Iran is such that we cannot find gaps inside it. It doesn't matter, it's not true that we say that supreme leader has the word, but supreme leader is under the Constitution. And he is actually a servant of the Constitution, and he explained very much times, that he just act as an actor of the Constitution of Iran. That's one. The second issue is there is a mechanism, historical mechanism, I call it automatic social stabilizer. Before election of President Rouhani, it was my expectation, and I actually wrote a paper for the Al-Monitor, but then on the wording it was beyond the 1,200, so because of that, it didn't publish. At that time, I expressed this, view that Rouhani has more chance to be elected. That's because of that automatic social stabilizer. You know, if you think about Ahmadinejad, under any standards, Ahmadinejad was not proper to be elected as a president. But the learning of the Iranians and the risk that they can take, you know, proved that to be a president of Iran. Nobody was thinking that Ahmadinejad is a president of Iran. It was before the election. And for twice, he was there. And then the issue of 2009, the election of 2009, I think it was an incident which probably put a wrong way of thinking in the West, and particularly in Obama's administration. I call it the 2009 election problem. I call it the baby boom effect, which happened in 1980s. Because, you know, in 1980s, because of the war, we had a baby boom there. And it appears to be in 2009, you know, youngsters. And they were not learned enough from the history of the country to be geopolitically considered issues. They were actually the actors which they proceeded under the globalization era. By that incident, they realized that who is who? And they placed themselves within the history of Iran. And we were not expecting that such a thing happens in the election that happened recently. So that's another. And then another problem, probably
because it's Mr. Karimi we are asking, and he's our guest. So, as far as you haven't posed any questions, I'd really give the floor to somebody who does have the question. Anyhow, thank you for your remarks and the further explanations.
Thank you. Andrej Matišak, I'm a journalist from Slovakia, Devi Pravda. You said that the corruption in the West is like a terrorism. Okay, corruption is a big issue, also in my country, but according to Transparency International Perception Index of Corruption, Iran is a highly corrupt country. So is it a problem also for your country, or would you say this index is a false one, or how would you explain that according to Transparency International, Iran is a very corrupt country? Thank you.
I said that the data given from different sources, we can't say that. I don't ignore that there is everything perfect in Iran. In fact, one of the reasons that we try to bring divine into the politics is to have the ethical foreign policy, ethical social lives, ethical day-to-day life. We haven't succeeded yet, but that is the intention. That's very important. Yes, corruption is everywhere. It is a common ground for cooperation to overcome it. But we have to remember that in some countries it's too much, in some countries it's not, obvious, and it is, behind the scene. As I said, that the data is from different sources, we can't trust, but I think that there's a common ground for all countries to overcome, enjoy the experience of other countries to stop it.
Any more questions, please? Yes.
Hello, my name is Stefan Serejansky from the Faculty of Political Science. Now, while commentators will disagree on the variety of it, everyone will agree that Mr. Rouhani is more moderate in comparison with Mr. Ahmadinejad. So my question is, and even you yourself pointed that out, that the rebels in Syria are mostly extremists. You said that yourself, that they are mostly nationalist. However, reading the news in the last few days, Mr. Rouhani proposed that Iran acts as a mediator in the Syria civil war. Can we expect a genuine policy change on this subject in the future, in your opinion?
Thank you very much. That's a good question. You see, Iran always was in favor of dialogue. that in case there is some problem, all sides has to sit and solve the problems. We feel that the foreign interference in the affairs of the Middle Eastern countries causes problems. For example, here in your area, is it worth of Iran sending troops to Kosovo or Macedonia or Serbia and all that? It will be a matter of surprise. But in the Middle East, we witness that the foreign countries are interfering militarily, other ways and all that for last 60 years. That has to be stopped. You have seen that the, I call it triangle dialogue creators. In fact, that was a common ground between Iran, Obama, White House, not the Congress, and the Putin. They were favoring the dialogue. Geneva too, we are looking for. But on the opposite side, you have the France and Britain. They are more warmongering. They are trying, Israel, France, and Britain, the triangle of crisis creator. They are trying to make the invasion. And I have to remind you that it's going to happen like the Suez crisis of the Egypt in 1956. That time, again, it was France, Britain, and Israel. They invaded Egypt. At that time, United States condemned all the three countries. Yes, we are looking for dialogue. All parties has to sit. They are going to have new elections. One man, one vote. We favor democracy. And all the countries, particularly the European Union, could act, get in. Particularly the countries. In the morning, we have a discussion about how you define the national foreign policy and the CSDP within the European. Because as Iran, we have sometimes countries friendly to Iran, but members of the European Union, they say, you see, we know that your policy in nuclear issue, other issues are right. But unfortunately, because of the European Union, we can't act independently and we have to come together. That's the problem. So I hope that the scholars over here in this room try to see different political phenomena from different angles. Yes, it is the mass media, they try to give a misperception of Iran, which is wrong. And when you have the misperception, you have the misjudgment and miscalculation. But you look at the history. It happened during the Suez crisis. Now we have President Obama because he doesn't want to get engaged into the war. And when you have followed the policy of the United States in Libya, behind France and Britain, you have seen the Mali that France has gone alone and brought. I think these two countries we have to be taken care of, that their policy is not good. That's why I said that we have to praise the British people. They stopped their parliament. Otherwise, it was going to be a repeated false and flawed history of the Iraq invasion.
Well, I have to take care that our, and Mr. Karimi and all our distinguished guests don't miss the dinner. So, very last question, please. Okay.
My name is Nikola Đurić, and I also come from the Faculty of Political Science. We heard just a few moments ago that Iran, after the revolution, brought the divine element into foreign policy so it could enhance its morality. My question is, do you think that we can have a moral, so a secular foreign policy without it being faith-based? And if yes, what was the whole thing with bringing faith into the game? Thank you.
Shall I? Oh, there is, you see, I did my PhD in London University. When I used to study the politics and all that, they used to say that diplomat is an honest person who has to lie for his country. I was surprised that, is it worth of profession to follow? Or perhaps you hear that politics is a dirty game. Is it worth of having nice suits and go through that dirty profession? Nonsense. That is why we feel that you have to bring divine into day-to-day life, particularly in politics. That is why here I am confident that when we are not opting for the nuclear weapons, we are not opting for it. We do not need it. But on the other side, they do not believe it. What's the difference is? Because of the mindset. Because they have it, they use it, they are threatening to use it, then they accuse us that you are going to have it. How you can manage this? That is why we feel that ethical foreign policy is good. Let us try it. At least give time. Trust. You know, diplomacy or the relation between two countries is a two-way street. It's not just Iran gives up, but the United States supplies all the armaments to the countries they would like. They have also to be checked. President Obama, he himself came to power with the slogan of change. That was his slogan. Could he deliver? No. Because he wanted that to get rid of the nuclear weapons. He couldn't. That is why we feel that through divine elements, you could improve. We didn't succeed yet because we need more hands. We need more cooperation. But at least let us try it, to show it. Thank you for your question.
So whatever, if we're talking about the ethical or non-ethical diplomacy with the right that, of course, the given sides are giving themselves the compliments of being ethical and the others unethical. But we are in a position that those two sides seems like at this very moment they're ready for removing the tensions as it is, as it was said. So Professor Karimi, you will answer for the, thank you for the participating at the forum. As your last message, are you optimist in that process of removing the tension? Because if it really happens, you know, when I was thinking about what the subject we are talking, if that happens, as far as I can see, it can only be compared with the time of Deng Xiaoping and the Nixon and so-called ping-pong diplomacy, that great really breakthrough on the international arena. So you, as a diplomat and as a person, you believe it is possible?
Absolutely, because my belief, and as a diplomat, I have to be positive. I have to try. Yes, I'm positive, and I'm looking forward.
And as we know, Tango needs two. Thank you very much. I think we managed to help whatever clearing up the things and approaches and the way of thinking, especially from Iran, where we doesn't have the very frequent occasions to hear the original analysis coming from Tehran. Thank you once again, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.